Hey there, everyone. This is Dan Dix here, reporting for Press for Truth, and today I am here joined by the one and only Rick Rule. Sir, thanks so much for taking some time to speak with us today.
Always a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Now, I'm curious as to, there's a lot of talk right now going on about a possible coming collapse of the dollar in America. Now, what do you think? Is this possibly coming down the road soon? And if so, when can we expect to see something like that?
Well, soon, I think, is silliness. The U.S. dollar has been strong, not weak. I don't think it's been strong for fundamental reasons. I think it's been strong because of weakness in the competitors. Our mutual friend Doug Casey describes the dollar as an I owe you nothing, and the euro as a who owes you nothing, which I think says something about the strength of the dollar. But the truth is that there's still worldwide faith in the hegemony of the U.S. 10-year Treasury and the U.S. currency. Until something happens to shake the faith in the dollar, I think the dollar will stay relatively strong. The idea that the end of the financial world as we know it is upon us, I think, is I think, silly. Looking longer term, we all know the arguments about dollar weakness. I think that they're all valid arithmetically, but the narrative right now is still fairly strongly pro-dollar.
Well, when it comes to benefiting in times of crisis, let's say, if you want to benefit off the crash of the dollar, if that's not going to happen, what about what's going on in Greece or perhaps what's happening in China? Or are there other places where people should be looking to invest and to protect their investments in times of trouble?
Well, let me say this. The dollar is strong because of confidence in the dollar. That's a near-term phenomenon. I'm not talking about about profiting from the collapse of the dollar, but protecting yourself from the collapse of the dollar, diversifying into high-quality companies in other countries that are maybe undervalued because the dollar is so strong, diversifying into precious metals, which are, of course, weak because the dollar is strong, paying down your leverage or at least making your leverage non-recourse. Those are all good ideas. And despite the fact that there is faith in the U.S. dollar, you asked me if there was going to be a crash. That near-term answer is no, but are there risks in being in the dollar? Absolutely there are risks in terms of being in the dollar.
Well, it seems like a lot of countries are trying to position themselves to get away from the dollar. It seems that China's doing that to protect themselves. They seem to see a crash coming. They seem to be setting themselves up to protect themselves for that. Do you see that as well? Or does it seem that they seem to see something coming down the road?
I think that the Chinese are acting prudently and rationally. The Chinese are still very large holders of the U.S. Treasuries. And while the Chinese see it, I think, as a troubled instrument, they see it as a more stable instrument than other troubled instruments that they have access to. The Chinese, over time, will certainly spend their dollar hoard to develop China, but they can't do it too quickly. And the Chinese, of course, have problems of their own. It's argued that the U.S. is a command and control economy, but the U.S. is no more a command and control economy of China. And the idea that 10,000 people in China can make decisions for 1.4 billion people is an idea that leads to the type of instability that we've seen. With regards to the Chinese diversifying out of the U.S. dollar, I think that's a very good idea. And they have, one would say, higher and better uses of the funds, but that'll take a long time, and that in and of itself won't precipitate any dollar crisis.
For the average Canadian who just wants to protect themselves, or anybody who's interested in getting into gold and silver, for example, is there any worry that those markets are being manipulated? I mean, how do we know if the gold market is being manipulated or not?
Well, all markets are manipulated from time to time. I would argue that gold and silver markets were manipulated up in 2009, 2010, 2011. The manipulators that I'm aware of are traders, and what they do is take advantage of a trend in motion and exacerbate that trend so that they can murder the option holders. Certainly now, the preeminent direction in gold has been down, and so the manipulation has been gold. You saw the flash sell-off 2 weeks ago, where somebody sold about 5 tons of gold, and they timed the sale to get the lowest possible price. Obviously, nobody was looking to maximize the benefit from the gold they owned. They were looking to manipulate the market. The suggestion from my point of view that there is a long-term, large-scale attempt to lower the price of gold makes no sense because the strength of the dollar itself lowered the price of gold. The idea that the big banks conspired over many years to do that seems far-fetched to me. And the idea that the governments could do it when they lost the war in Afghanistan, They lost the war in Iraq, they lost the war on poverty, and they lost the war on drugs. From my own point of view, if the government was actually trying to manipulate the price of gold down, it'd be $3,000 an ounce.
Last question. I mean, with the introduction of digital currencies now, what are your thoughts on things like Bitcoin being introduced into the market? Is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? Do you like Bitcoin?
Fantastic thing. You and I are consumers of currencies. That's one of the things we do. We're consumers of currency. Sometimes you're in Canadian dollars, sometimes you're in US dollars, sometimes you're in gold, sometimes you're in silver. Consumers always benefit from competition. Bitcoin, altcoin, BitGold, rubles, yen, it's all good. If we're consumers of tennis shoes, we want 50 tennis shoe makers. And we happen to be consumers of currencies, you and I. So the more the merrier.
I would happen to agree. Why not have 7 billion individual currencies out there, one for everybody? Sir, thank you so much for talking to us. Where can people go to learn more from you?
We'd love it if your listeners came to our website, www.sprottglobal.com, or from the U.S. and Canada, call us at 800-477-7853.
Check the links in the description below, folks, and thank you once again for taking some time to speak with us today.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.